You're all right, guys. You're tuning into Gangrene UK's podcast, videocast, whatever we're calling it nowadays. It's episode 15, and we're joined with Harrison. So, Harrison, thanks for joining us. So,
My pleasure, man. I'm excited to be here.
Oh, amazing. So, the first thing I wanted to do is some of our newbie guys won't be quite familiar with you and your channels. So, do you want to give them a little brief about who you are and how you're into the Jets?
Definitely, man. I'd love to. So yeah, I'm a hardcore fan myself. I've been a Jet fan my whole life. My grandfather got me into it. I have a whole thing on, Twitter, how I talk about how, we lost him unfortunately in 2018, but he was a hardcore Jet fan. It's been so long since our last Super Bowl. I feel like this next one that Zach Wilson leads us to, it's gonna be for all the Jet fans we lost along the way. See, I'm a hardcore fan, but I also do writing and reporting for the Jets. I have my own company, TakeFlight Media. If you guys check it out, my website, takeflightmedia.org. Jets writing, reporting stories. Also do it on Twitter. I have a podcast I do. It's the name down here, Take Flight Spit and Fire Podcast. Definitely check me out, guys.
No, absolutely. I know we've checked out the podcast a few times. Fraser, who can't be with us today, is like, he's the one who started the ball rolling to talk to you. And he literally started a new job today. And he's like full on, and it's quite an intense job he started. So yeah, he's absolutely gutted he can't be on, but we're really appreciative of your time and everything. So yeah, our group's growing kind of from strength to strength, which is great because it's showing that the UK fan base is getting bigger. So I know a few of the guys have got some questions, so we're going to fire some over, and then obviously we'd love it if you have any questions for us to come back as well.
Sounds good. Let's do it, man.
So, Kane, did you have one that you had prepared?
Yeah, just wanting to know who your favourite Jet of all time is, really, first.
Favorite of all time? It's kind of tough, but also kind of easy. It's interesting. Like, I'd probably have to say Chad Pennington. Easily, like Chad Pennington was my favorite quarterback. I loved watching that kid. I feel like Zach Wilson has the most potential at quarterback since Chad Pennington. So I love Zach right now. I love the potential there. But Chad was just, growing up. Like, I was at the game with my dad where he got hurt. Where Vinny Testaverde got hurt, and he came in for the first time. But people forget, before he tore that rotator cuff, man, he had power. He had zip behind those throws, and he was one of the most accurate quarterbacks of all time. That's why even, after tearing that shoulder 2 times with like literally no arm strength, the dude's still hitting wide receivers in the NFL, like one of the most accurate ever. So yeah, I remember I was at that game when he, was unbelievably accurate, making great throws, still had zip behind the ball. I turned to my dad. I'm like, this guy's going to win a Super Bowl. And I'm still convinced that if he didn't get hurt, man, he could have been as good as Brady. I definitely think so.
You hear that a lot, don't you, with people who like really got to watch Chad, that he had so much potential. That's probably one of my biggest things with football of, when they say, what if you could pick one situation happen, it would be, what if Chad didn't get hurt? So
I'm with you. I actually tweeted that out. I think it was like maybe a month or 2 ago, because somebody, people post questions on Twitter. They were like, what is the one thing you can change in sport history? And that was the big thing. I immediately thought that, like, if Chad had never got hurt, never did get hurt, man, I'm thinking instead of Brady having 7, they would both have like 3 each and both be considered great.
I like that prediction. I mean, Chad was at the start of my era. I got in like 2000, like 99, 2000. So it was like kind of that point where everything was starting to look good towards the middle bit, but yeah, it didn't quite work. Have you got any Otis?
So we've touched on favorite sort of all-time Jet. Any sort of favorites among the current roster and the guys that are sort of coming through at the moment? Obviously, you mentioned Zach already and potential. I think we're all pretty excited about Zach. Who's the favorite at the moment?
I mean, it would probably have to be Zach, because I'd stuck to this for a long time. Like, when I went into more deeper QB eval back like end of November, when Trevor Lawrence was no longer an option, and I talked about how I didn't get why everybody was rubber banding back to Sam. It just didn't make sense. Like, all the people that had moved on, like, you obviously moved on for a reason. I didn't get why people were just, okay, well, we can't have Trevor, now it's Sam. So I started looking into other guys. I just fell for Zach immediately. Like, Trevor, I begrudgingly became a fan of. I was saying things like, Deshaun Watson was just as good at Clemson. I don't get the generational topic. And everyone's like, shut up. Don't say that. So, but I just fell in love with Zach immediately. Like that kid just checked every box I look for when it comes to NFL translatable traits, cerebral traits that I know a lot of people call intangible. I call them cerebral because the game is so mental. I just love him. I love his potential. I love everything I see in him. I expect him to be great. I was saying back in December when everyone was talking about Fields, like Fields was the number 2 guy. I was like, I don't get what everyone's talking about. Like this is the number 2 quarterback. Like I don't get it. Like this guy is going to be awesome. And in some ways, like pocket awareness, he's infinitely better than Trevor Lawrence. So I really love his potential. I think again, going back to all the quarterbacks we've had, like I liked Sanchez. I was indifferent about Darnold. I kind of wanted Lamar Jackson. Knew the Jets wouldn't take him. I think Zach Wilson has the most potential since a guy like Chad Pennington.
So I've said you'd been into a lot of early analysis on Zach. What weight did you put behind the sort of theory that you've got quite a thin frame and that potentially NFL size pass rushes landing on that frame might not be the best thing for him?
Oh, I took it personal. I was like, Zach. People were calling me like Zach Wilson's defense attorney because I was just knocking that stuff down because it didn't make sense to me. Like everyone's saying his frame was too small. I'm like, well, you clearly haven't watched him. And as we now know, even though he's shorter than Trevor Lawrence, he weighs more. He weighs more than him. He's bigger, stronger. I knew he was. I'm like, I don't get what everyone's talking about. People thought he's under 6 foot. Didn't make sense to me. He's more than tough enough. He's going to slide though in the NFL. He's not going to take those kind of hits. So that's not going to be as big a problem. Like Russell Wilson, which I love in him and compared him more to with the pocket awareness. He's not going to take those usage. He's going to run, but be smart about it. But all those arguments, like the competition argument, that makes no sense to me, the competition argument, because competition's relative. Like at Ohio State or Clemson. Yeah, you're playing infinitely better competition, but look at like the reason I wasn't a big fan of Mac Jones. Look at the talent he had around him. Like Sam Darnold would have killed somebody last year to have the kind of wide receiver talent that kid had in college. Like it's crazy. So I talk about that also, system quarterbacks. Like if Fields was a system quarterback, it's an excellent system you're designed to succeed in. BYU wasn't like that. I talk about predictability factor. There was none there, but the competition aspect, there was not, he doesn't have the same talent of wide receivers he's throwing to. It doesn't make sense. If anything, I would put it the other way, that the competition argument actually works against the guys that go for the bigger schools.
Yeah, I think we're in agreement on that one because when we had that chat a while back, we were looking at it going, well, if you're at an average school with an average roster and you're excelling, playing against equal, it's the same as what you said, like Mac Jones. I mean, that roster was impeccable last year. Me and Kane did it on a podcast yesterday, and we were looking at it and we're like, yeah, on paper, that team is outstanding and it should do outstanding things, and they did. So, yeah, very, very similar on that one.
Alabama's almost built to be an NFL team. The standard of quality that Alabama possesses, and particularly the offense at Clemson. I don't think the defense is quite so spectacular at Clemson, but both of them are designed, and LSU, when it gets it right, are almost NFL-ready teams if you just took the whole roster and just went, right, play on Sunday.
Yeah. So do you have any concerns going into this season with any players or positions?
I'm excited about the positional battles, honestly. I mean, people talk about us being weak at corner. I mean, Bryce Hall is massively slept on. I mean, that kid in a bad system, like with Adam Gase as his head coach, in Greg Williams' bad defense, he looked like a CB1 with the odds against him, not for him. And he only played a limited time. I loved him in college. I felt like he had unbelievable potential. I can't believe he was as good as he was last year. In this better system now where they're going to use him to his strengths, I definitely think he's just scratching the surface of his potential. But people talk about bringing in another corner. At the CB2 position, we got a 3-way competition right now between Bless Austin, Jason Pinnock, who I'm a huge fan of. I love Pinnock, talking about him nonstop, and Isaiah Dunn, who's come out of nowhere. So, I mean, if one of those guys out of the 3, or even Lamar Jackson, who was slept on last year as an undrafted guy, if one of them step up into the CB2 position, we're looking pretty good. I mean, at linebacker, we have a lot of competition right now with the 2 rookies we brought in. Gerard Davis is looking good, which is great because we took a flyer contract on him. We didn't know what he was going to be, but they say that he's looking very good. They say Mosley looks back to form. Our defensive front 7 is just unbelievable. I mean, on offense, the wide receiver 2 position is another interesting battle we'll be watching when camp starts too, the battle between Cole and Mims. And I talked about that a lot because there's a lot to it, but basically Apparently, Joe Douglas has been trying to actively acquire Cole for 2 years, so he's just as much his guy as Mims is. Cole's apparently the better route runner. That's what a lot of the beat runners say. So when their pads go on, there's going to be a lot of interesting positional battles. Like there's legit like 10 or so positional battles that are going to be interesting to watch when the pad goes on and when preseason starts.
It's interesting. You mentioned wide receivers. We've talked wide receivers a lot. Coming up to free agency in the draft, I was a huge advocate of Corey Davis, as the boys will love to tell you. And then sort of everything that's happened free agency with the depth signings and then drafting Elijah Moore. Mims has sort of been possibly slept on a little bit, I think, and slightly certainly pushed down the depth chart with some of the illness he's had. Do you think getting the pads on and seeing his physicality will bring him back up? Because although Cole is quick and probably a better route runner, as you say, I think the physicality of Mims is something that can't be replicated without pads.
No, I totally agree. And I was saying last year when we drafted him that this kid has wide receiver 1 potential. Before the, free agency began and we brought in Corey Davis and we drafted Elijah Moore, I was saying Mims does have wide receiver 1 potential. The kid was supposed to be a first round prospect. He's got unbelievable hands, great ability, speed, checks every box. But what's interesting is the stories that have been coming from camp. So we thought that, Mims wasn't running with the ones because of, like I said, injury, maybe illness. But once he came back, he was consistently running with the 2s. And what I thought was interesting was I built a little bit of a relationship with the beat writers. I do exclusives with DJ Bienemy. And he told me flat out that in his opinion, that this Robert Saleh system requires precision and precise route runners. And that's what this system is designed for, which is Corey Davis, which is Elijah Moore in spades. Like that kid is a rookie, might be the best route runner on this team, which is crazy. But Keelan Cole, they say is an infinitely better route runner. And I actually tweeted out to Connor Hughes because he said the same thing, and he actually responded to me. And that's where he kind of broke news. That's where he kind of, said that the Jets have been actively trying to acquire Keelan Cole for the last 2 years, which to me, that was the biggest factor. Because I kept saying like to myself, Joe Douglas just drafted Denzel Mims last year. He just drafted him, should have been a first round prospect. That's his guy. But if he's been trying to get Keelan Cole for 2 years, and he's only been here for 2 years, he's been trying to get him the whole time, Keelan Cole is just as much his guy too. So when you realize that, it could be anyone's game. And Connor kind of said the same thing, that he viewed Mims as more a quote unquote linear player that doesn't have that deep a route tree that Cole does. And the way I look at it, man, is anyone other than Zach Wilson, it's wide open to me. Like especially running back, wide open competition right now. Whoever wants it, come get it. Like if Mims wants to be the 2, if Cole wants to be the 2, whoever wants it, show up in camp, best player gets the job. Other than Zach Wilson, to me, everything is wide open.
So with that in mind, and you talk about the route running and what Cole offers over Mims, interesting, we only signed Cole to a 1-year deal. Do you think part of that is be here for a year, do well for a year, teach Mims what Mims needs to know to be great, Zach Wilson second year, so that Mims has got that developmental year, hopefully fully fit, given that he never was in his rookie year?
It's definitely possible. That could definitely be one way to look at it. But the fact that Cole has, again, been consistently working with the 2s, been that guy, even though Mims is healthy, hearing this story from 2 different people saying literally the same thing, my thought would maybe be, maybe he's giving Cole a prove-it contract, saying to Keelan Cole, we believe in you. We've thought you could be the guy for 2 years, but Jacksonville didn't want to let you go because they knew you were good. Here's your shot. You have a 1-year deal. Go out, kick some ass, have 1,000 yards, and then get paid. So that might be, I think, the way he's looking at it is, right now it's your opportunity. If you have a huge year, maybe the Jets pay him next year. I mean, he's not an older guy. They could definitely pay him and bring him on as one of the receivers.
So that's really interesting, mentioning 1,000 yards, and probably brings us on to something else that would be worth talking about. 1,000-yard receivers. We haven't had one for a while. Do we have the potential with then Corey Davis and Cole, if you're saying that it's maybe on the cards for Cole as well? Do we have potential to see 2 1,000-yard receivers in the Jets uniform this year?
Without a doubt. And I honestly think Elijah Moore actually has more of a chance of doing that than Keelan Cole. But again, who knows? That's the beauty of it. It's wide open right now. Maybe Mims becomes the guy. Maybe Cole becomes the guy. Hell, maybe someone comes out of left field. We have so many guys in depth. It's just interesting. But Elijah Moore, man, this kid, I was thinking back to the potential at wide receiver, like drafting a wide receiver with the potential that he had, a guy that should have gone as high as he did. I have to go all the way back to Keyshawn Johnson. I honestly have to go all the way back to 1996 because the only other first round wide receiver the Jets took was Santana Moss, and he didn't put up 1,000 yards in college. Moore was one of the best receivers in college football. He was the best slot wide receiver, period, arguably the best receiver in this draft. The numbers are insane, holding every single one of his red zone targets through his whole time in college. It's unbelievable. He has great potential. Davis, as you mentioned, Davis was the 5th overall pick back in 2017. He was the 5th overall pick for a reason. At Western Michigan, the dude was an animal. He still holds, I'm pretty confident, the most receiving yards in FBS history with like 5,200 something, and second most touchdowns with like 50 something. So he had his best season last year. Yeah, I think Corey Davis and Elijah Moore have the most potential to reach 1,000, but hell, it could be Cole, could be Mims. The beauty of it is Wilson has options, which is what you want. You want your quarterback to have as many options as possible.
I better let someone else ask a question. James, do you want to fire away?
Yeah, no worries, man. Well, the Adam Gase running game was pretty awful to watch every the past 2 years, man. The run down the middle again and again. So again, with this new system and some new running backs in there, who do you see maybe taking that number one role? And do you think we're gonna, have a much better game this year?
Yeah, running back's really important. And you look at, the 49ers the last couple of years with Robert Saleh's literal the offensive really, but the offense blueprint with the Shanahan system that LaFleur is going to implement has been, you don't need a bell horse running back. And that's not the thing anymore. I mean, I definitely think Michael Carter could be a running back one. I love that kid's potential. So I'll get to him in a sec, but the system is designed, for committees to do well, for running backs. You don't need an all-star, especially in this modern day NFL. I mean, these last couple of years, the 49ers have had great years from guys like Moser, like guys like the Jets even had at one point and decided to pass on. So, I think it was LaFleur. It was about, I think, 2 weeks ago or so-ish, they interviewed him about the offense. And I don't have the direct quote in front of me, but basically a paraphrasing of it was, this offense is built around the running game. The running game is going to open up the groundwork to be able to throw play action and deep. So the running game is infinitely important in this offense. It's the bloodline of it, really. And I love the potential of Michael Carter. Like, that kid massively slept on because of Javonte Williams. Like, I didn't get it. Everyone's talking about Javonte. I'm like, Michael Carter's just as good. In fact, they had about the same amount of carries last year, yet Michael Carter had more yards and more yards per carry. So he's unbelievable. I watched the kid. My favorite thing about him is his patience. He's got that old school kind of running back patience that you don't see as much anymore, but he's powerful. Like, I make a big thing when I do draft eval. I don't get caught up in measurables, man. People that get caught up in measurables, it makes me crazy because you miss out on stuff. Like the joke I like to make, I make fun of the Denver Broncos. Like, when you get too caught up on measurables, you draft a Paxton Lynch, you draft a Brock Osweiler, and you miss on a Kyler Murray. Like, that's what happens when you get too caught up in measurables. So if you watch them, Michael Carter actually hit harder than Javonte Williams. And the dude's like 15 pounds lighter. So Michael Carter is very powerful for his size, excellent speed, good agility, patient, love his potential. You got Tevin Coleman back there. He did well in the 49ers system. He has injury history, but heck, you got Ty Johnson and Josh Adams, who I think it was James mentioned last year, the running game was bad. Well, the two of them were actually good. Like, I had a whole take on this on Twitter. It was crazy. If you look at their numbers, they had high averages, high yards per carry, high receiving yards per carry, but they're getting like a carry a game because Gase decides, let's just give 1,000-year-old Frank Gore the ball. Just feed him the ball like every play. Because that makes sense, especially after the Vegas game. Like, the two of them absolutely killed it. It's time to bench them. Like, that makes sense. So there's a lot of potential in that running back. All five of them right now: LaMichael Pirine, Ty Johnson, Tevin Coleman, Michael Carter, Josh Adams. It's a complete open backfield right now. I think Michael Carter will get it, but it's open for anybody who wants it.
Do you think one of those could be a cap casualty as we go further through camp? Or do you
What's ironic is my biggest take was always LaMichael Pirine. Like, I felt like, I don't hate the dude by any means, but he's not really big enough to be a power back. Like, if I want a power back, I go with Josh Adams, who's infinitely stronger and bigger and just as fast. And he's not that quick either. So, like, my joke with him is I was like, okay, LaMichael, you got in the offseason, like, hit the speed and agility drills and get faster and shed some pounds, or hit the gym like an animal and put like 10 pounds of weight on. Like, right now, you're right in the middle. But what's interesting is Robert Saleh in an interview called LaMichael Pirine his power back. And I felt like he was too small, but hey, if Robert Saleh said it, I mean, who knows?
Do you think he could
so
have
that's
put
interesting.
weight on that we don't know about? Because obviously we have been surprised with some of the fitness of some of the team. Obviously, we know you've commented on it with the Becton weight issue. and then we all saw
this
the
year.
video of him in the gym. Do you reckon that could be the same with Piran? He may have went away, and we're maybe not seeing the weight that he has put on or the speed that he has picked up.
Well, the way I always looked at P. Ryan is the same way I looked at Jabari Zuniga. I didn't hate the pick. I just felt like they were way too early. In the third round, Zuniga did not much in college. He was hurt a lot. He was drafted on raw potential alone. I wouldn't have taken him that high. There were other guys I wanted. Same thing with P. Ryan. If we would have taken P. Ryan in the late fifth, maybe early sixth, I would have loved the pick. Absolutely loved it. But I viewed him as a power back in college, kind of not big enough to be a power back in the NFL. It's going to be interesting to look at. I mean, when when Robert Saleh mentioned the running backs, he mentioned Johnson, P. Ryan, Tevin Coleman, and Michael Carter. And he didn't mention Josh Adams, which is interesting. But again, I would even argue if you look at just the numbers last year, Josh Adams was actually better than Ty Johnson in the limited sample size he played. So it's just interesting right now at running back. And again, the beauty is options. You have 5 guys right now that maybe could all, be potential starters in this committee system who are going to be the 2 or 3 guys that earn it. And I think they'll probably keep 4 running backs. And I think one of them is probably going to get cut. And I think right now it's probably either Josh Adams or P. Ryan.
I suspect as well, exactly on that. I think if you're going to cut one of them, I think you probably cut Josh Adams because you're more likely to be able to pack him up and put him on the practice squad because he's still going to be eligible for the practice squad. And the likelihood of someone else wanting him is compared to a P. Ryan that's maybe only done 2 years in the league, is very fresh, very young. I think you're more likely to lose him on waivers than you are to lose Josh Adams. You can probably pick him up on a practice squad spot in case of an injury and to bring him in. I think that's going to be an option with the 5th guy that gets cut.
Moving away from the offense a little bit, what defensive rookie do you think will make the most impact? I know you love Jason.
Defensive, I love Pinnock just because I looked at the numbers, man. And I mean, there's a lot of guys I like. Probably defense, like all together.
Yeah.
It's interesting because there's so many good picks. I mean, Michael Carter II right now looks like he could be the starter in the slot, which is interesting because I thought it'd be Javelin Guidry. Guidry came in last year from Brian Poole, one of the best slot quarters in the NFL, and he didn't miss a beat. He looked just as good as an undrafted rookie. But in camp, Michael Carter II has been lighting it up. So it could be the 2 of them, which is interesting. Pinnock, man, I mean, just the numbers, like what he put up, I tweeted it out because it just blew my mind. I look at the numbers he put up. Like people were talking when J.C. Horn went 8th. They were like, oh my God, J.C. Horn had a 33% completion percentage against in 2020 out of the 3rd best corner in all of college football. What's interesting was Jason Pinnock was number 1. Jason Pinnock, the 5th round pick, was number 1 in all of that. He had a 30% completion percentage against. In other categories, I don't have it in front of me, but it was like, best outside corner since 2019. He actually ranked above Derek Stingley Jr. in completion percentage against. Blew my mind. This kid plays on an island. The biggest knock on him is he gets beat by speed guys. That's the thing. He gets beat by like a Tyreek Hill. But if you understand the Pitt system, like I have a lot of friends who are really big Pitt fans. I'm big into Pitt, a big ACC guy. All their cornerbacks, their outside corners are on an island. That's a Pitt thing. That's what Darrelle Revis came from. All their outside corners are always on an island. Either you make it on your own or you fail and the next guy's up. And he played really well against non-speed guys, but the same thing would happen to Bryce Hall. You put Bryce Hall against a Tyreek Hill with no help over the top. His ass is getting smoked too. There's no ifs or ways about it. So Pinnock is a big, strong, physical corner. He needs help over the top. But if he has that safety help over the top like Hall, man, I think the 2 of those guys could be legit, physical, shutdown, lockdown corners.
I think,
and another one, even Hamza Nasruddin. Like, there's just so much. Like, even him. There's like, there's just. I think Joe Douglas killed this last draft. There's just so much talent to talk about.
As late as we got in the team, I think he's the one of the defensive rookies that I'm really excited about. And interesting, you mentioned cover over the top for Pinnock. I think that's something that this sort of Salah system enables as well. They play a lot of cover 1, and if you're a corner that does have concerns about getting beat over the top, a safety like Marcus May going from sideline to sideline really does help you, especially when he's cheating your side if you've got the speed guy.
And I think about it, man. It looks like right now, if those become the 4 Jets starting corners, if you have Bryce Hall, Jason Pinnock, Michael Carter, and Javelin Guidry on the inside, that means you have 3 5th-round guys and an undrafted guy as your top 4 corners. Man, that's just amazing. That just shows Joe Douglas knows how to find talent.
I think that would give everybody a little bit more confidence as well. I mean, at the minute, I don't think I've seen the Jets fandom as hyped as they are now. Like when we got Sam, there was a bit of hype, but it wasn't like this. This one has felt very, very different this offseason. And we've done podcasts with lots of like independent podcasts as well that aren't just on Jets. And I even had a Patriots one where they went, "You've got us excited to watch the Jets." So people are taking notice now. How do you think that'll affect the team? That obviously we've always been the perennial underdog. I think we still are an underdog, but obviously there was all the Jets are dumpster fires. They'll never get it right. Do you think we're at that point now where that's changing?
I think it's so many people say it's not true. You know, they call it the LOL Jets narrative. That's really what they were calling it. You know, the LOL Jets, like, which the Jets are low hanging fruit to begin with. I mean, it's like it's like picking on, you know, the weak kid in school. It's like, come on, man. It's like, at least, you know, step up with somebody formidable. Like, it's always low hanging fruit. But it's obvious they go after the Jets. And the two arguments I make, I mean, I feel like clearly pointed out, well, the two things they say about the Jets are, well, the Jets are like you said, perennial losing team. They always lose. They can't win. They can never get it right. Well, we've at least won one Super Bowl. The Detroit Lions are one of the oldest franchises in the history of football, and they haven't won shit. I mean, not only did they not won a Super Bowl, they haven't even won an NFL championship when that existed. They don't get nearly as much crap as the Jets do when it comes to losing. Now, the next thing they say about the Jets, oh, quarterback carousel. They can't get the quarterback right. Well, what about the Cleveland Browns? The Cleveland Browns have went through infinitely more quarterbacks than us. They went through like 15 quarterbacks in like a 7-year span. Like, it's crazy. But they don't talk about them as much. So it's clearly, you know, a rhetoric on the Jets. I think it's going to change. And that's why we see stuff now, you know, they're pointing out things with COVID, with Zach Wilson. It's because they got nothing else to talk about. They're going to find something to talk about, but eventually they're not going to have anything to talk about because it's a change in culture. Guys like Carl Lawson, guys like you mentioned, Corey Davis, literally came here because of guys like Robert Saleh. Vinny Curry came here because he was excited about the culture that Joe Douglas is changing and bringing. They can make their jokes if they want, but it's going to change.
No, I feel that you're exactly right on that. And I mean, Salah's one of those coaches that I say it all the time. Like, listening to him talk makes me want to run through a wall. I like, literally, he's got such
just brick wall.
Such a way to hype it up. Yeah, like, what? Just point me at them and I'll run. So yeah,
it's the energy we haven't seen since Rex Ryan, man. That's the kind of energy you want. Like, you couldn't turn a locker room against Rex Ryan if you tried. Comment on his coaching all you want, but you couldn't turn a locker room on him if you tried.
Yeah, well, we've had chats with Santonio Holmes and Nick Mangold, and they both were very, very big on Rex. They did mention his flaws, but they both kind of accredited him to some of the more positive things in their game, which it says a lot because Rex was brilliant, but Rex was bad, but Rex was brilliant. So knowing that the players had his back, I think showcases the type of person he is, and Salah seems to have the same. When he left San Fran and Sherman came out and went, he's not the best coach, he's the best human. And I think that kind of comes across, like, with the way everything's working at the minute. Did you have a question on coaching, Kane? I feel like you taught me one earlier on. I'm sure you said something on coaching. What about defensive coach with Albright? Do you think we're going to see much of a change versus, obviously, well, last year was just a dumpster fire on defense. I'm so glad I had to cancel my trip to the Vegas game because I think I would have cried. Do you think our defensive strategy is going to change much? Because obviously we've swapped now from 3 front to a 4 front. How do you think that'll affect things for, like, Quinnen?
Oh, without a doubt, man. And you see, I got Otis, I see, as the Quinnen jersey in the background over there. I tweeted it out the other day because in an interview, one of the NFC executives said literally the same thing, that Quinnen was used wrong. Like, that's not his position. He was used improperly and still did well because he's that caliber of an athlete, but he's made to play in the interior. I mean, he could be a defensive end. Sure, why not? But if you play him on the interior, he's one of the best in the game. So he's plug and play defensive interior number 1. I think what's interesting is a lot of people like Rankins, but again, Rankins is like, you know, Gerard Davis. It's a prove it deal. I mean, he was supposed to be like Quinnen Williams, but it never panned out. Hopefully it does. He had 1 or 2 good years, but John Franklin Myers really came on last year, like insanely came on. And I actually had him on my podcast for an interview, an exclusive, and he was talking about all the defensive line guys. He said they're all great, love Lawson, love this. But when he got to Vinny Curry, he said that Vinny Curry has the fastest get off that he's ever seen in his life. Like ever. And the dude's 33 years old, but he's not slowing down. I mean, he had 10 QB hits last year. That would have ranked third on the Jets behind Quinnen and John Franklin Myers. So I think we're going to see possibly Franklin Myers maybe beating out Rankins, him and Quinnen playing in the interior with Lawson on one side and an like rotating between Bryce Huff and Vinny Curry on the other side.
That's interesting. I hadn't heard of Franklin Myers playing DT. I pegged it if it was going to be Myers starting at D end. I think Myers would make an interesting D end, and if it's not Rankins next to Quinnen, Fatukasi, because I think Fatukasi would be a really interesting pairing with Quinnen and move Franklin Myers to D end. I think he'd be a fantastic D end with a bit more size than Lawson.
And that's the beauty of it, man. The options. That's what's so great about it. We have all these guys, rotational pieces. Play Franklin on the inside, bring Curry in, bring Huff in, kick him to the outside, put Rankins in, like you were saying, bring Foley in, who's one of the most underappreciated run stoppers in the NFL right now as a young kid. Even Nathan Shepard last year started to look like he was coming on as a pass rusher from the interior of that line. It's just stacked. It's beautiful. And with Robert Saleh defenses, every year I went back and looked at the numbers. His defenses always ranked top of the NFL in QB hurries. Even in 2020, when Bosa was out with all those injuries, they still ranked top of the NFL because his defense is designed with getting to the quarterback, causing disruption, breaking up the play, taking the pressure off the corners, which I think because our front seven is so good, it's going to take the pressure off the secondary.
In the interviews you mentioned earlier, Saleh, when talking about the defense, like LaFleur talking about the offense, mentioned that the corners aren't going to be an issue at all if the D-line does its job. He said the D-line is the heart of my defense, and providing they do what I want them to, it won't matter who's at corner, which I thought was really impactful to be that confident in your D-line guys and also take the pressure off the position group that probably is most under scrutiny at the moment. You know, those guys know that the New York media is looking at them as the weakness of this defense. And he's going, no, as long as the guys up front do their job, them guys are fine. Don't need to worry. I thought that was massive.
Yeah, and I think a good way to look at it is people were talking about, bringing in veterans like Steven Nelson. What people didn't realize is when Robert Saleh was the DC at, 49ers, both of his cornerbacks were available. He could have gotten Richard Sherman, which he still could do, and he could have gotten Ahkello Witherspoon. He could have easily brought him in and paid him. He chose to not because he's basically saying that my defense is on the front seven, and I feel like the guys the Jets have can do just fine, if not just as good as those guys.
A guy we talk about a lot, mentioned him slightly earlier, playing one high safety and free safety. Do you think it's important for the Jets to sign Marcus May long-term before this season, or do you think it's okay to let him ride this tag? He's obviously a key part of the defense. He showed his talents last year with Jamal gone and probably showed that he was, in many respects, more important than Jamal, I think. Do you think he's going to get paid?
Yeah, no, without a doubt, he proved himself more important than Jamal because Jamal wasn't the best in coverage. I mean, people didn't want to point that out when he was with the Jets. We kind of poo-pooed that, but he wasn't that great in coverage. He was good at everything else. But May proved last year he can play in the box. He can be a big hitter. He can play that hybrid linebacker position, but he's also damn good in coverage. I think people are going to freak out as the extension date comes close because we're kind of, what do we day are we on? So we're getting close. We're a couple days out. So I think people are going to start to freak out and be like, oh my God. But I don't think they need to. That's my message to people. Like, don't freak out because he's still under contract this year. He's playing out the year and they can just pay him next year. This is right now the time. They have the whole season for Joe and Eric and Marcus and, those guys with Eric's his agent for them to all sit down and work this out. So I think people are going to freak out that he doesn't get the extension. I wouldn't be surprised if it doesn't happen. But at the end of the season, I probably expect, a deal to be made.
I was expecting it in the next couple of days. I think it's nearer to completion. Would you like to speculate where you think the figure will be?
Well, what's interesting was I think too many people were focused on the money number, like, oh, he doesn't want to pay him. But I don't think that's true. I mean, Joe Douglas proved it with Carl Lawson, proved it with Corey Davis. He gets value. He understands what a player's worth. So I think what I felt the biggest issue was the time duration, because he's not the youngest guy. He's going to be 28 when this season starts. So maybe he wanted like a 3 or 4 year deal. And Joe's like, no, I want to give you 2. So what I would do, I think I talked about a couple of months ago, in that situation, I would try to, front end the contract and give more guaranteed money to try to get him to take a shorter deal because he is older. And I think that's what we're probably going to see. If I had to guess, I'd say like a 2 to 3 year deal, 3 year tops, maybe even 2 year. But if it's a 2 year, the money's going to be there. So it could be something like 2 years, 28 million with like maybe 18 million of a guarantee, with a huge chunk of it guaranteed because he deserves it. And that way you're saying, we don't want to give you the long time, but we are going to pay you.
Yeah, and there's nothing saying that they can't extend again if he's still got it.
Exactly,
I like the thought on that one. It's about where I think we had the numbers going. We thought about 14. So I think he's worth it. What are your thoughts on Ashton Davis? Because obviously last year everyone thought he was the Jamal replacement. Then he kind of stepped in. He's moved around a little bit. What are you thinking?
I think Ashton Davis is massively slept on. I think people should not be sleeping on him as much as they are. Because last year, he showed it when he was drafted. He's a track star. That kid is a burner. Like, he's going to keep up with anybody. He can return the balls if he needs to. Unbelievably fast, great hurdler. But last year, I think he proved, people were like, can he be a big hitter? Can he be a box safety? Well, people forget he murdered Cam Newton. Like, he went up in that New England game to the line of scrimmage, hit Cam Newton, who's a big quarterback, and knocked him out of the game, like totally took him out. So I think Davis, because of, not playing as much, being hurt a little bit, he kind of got slept on. I think he could be a big factor, but I'm more excited, honestly, about LaMarcus Joyner. Like, LaMarcus Joyner was an unbelievable signing because when he played slot corner in the league, he's been pretty bad. He had like a 59, 60 PFF rating, but exclusively when he played free safety in the NFL, he's at a 90.1 grading. In fact, he's been one of the better safeties in the NFL when he exclusively plays safety. So I think that was the big question of what is he going to do? Is he going to be a safety or not? Ulbridge confirmed it in Flight 2021 when they were talking about Joyner. Ulbridge confirmed that LaMarcus Joyner will exclusively be playing safety. So that excites me. I think LaMarcus Joyner at free safety and Marcus May at strong safety, that could be the duo that we hope that Jamal Adams and Marcus May could have been. And then you got Ashton Davis for 3 safety sets. Plus you got, again, Hamza Nasruddin, Jamie and Sherwood. The beauty of that is they're hybrid linebackers that can all play so many positions. Not saying they're going to do it, but hell, Sherwood or Nasruddin could play safety. May or Davis could play that hybrid linebacker role. You have a lot of options. You have a lot of versatility.
I think that's going to give us a bit of an advantage against a lot of teams because they are not going to know what we're running. Like, we can line up and make it look one way, but you've got so many hybrid players on there that it could just end up being a free-for-all. Well, it looks like a free-for-all, but it'll be pre-planned. So where are you feeling this season's going? Or are you one of the guys that are sitting on, it's not about the wins, it's more about the development? Or are you bold enough to go, right, we're going to get this many wins?
Well, I'm the way with it's more about the development, less about the wins. But at the same time, I'm excited about the potential of this team. Because I pointed out the other day, I come back to the Mike Tyson quote. I just always think of that. Like, everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the mouth. And same thing, happened when he fought Holyfield, same thing. Right now, the Jets, you can't prepare for this team. You can try, but you're synthesizing all different factors. You can't find Robert Saleh as a head coach with Mike LaFleur as an OC, with this system being implemented, with Corey Davis at wide receiver 1, with Zach Wilson, the quarterback of the Jets. You have to look at all these different places. Nobody in those first few weeks is going to be ready for us. So I want us to come out with that mentality, punch him in the mouth out of the gate, come out with 4 wide receiver sets, mix things up, deep, like you said, hybrid defenses that they're not ready for. Maybe we could take the NFL by storm. So I lean toward the fact it's more about the development. If we have 6 to 8 wins at the end of the year, as long as, Zach Wilson's looking good, he looks like he's getting better week by week. He's making the right decisions, making better progressions. The offense looks good. They're playing well. They're gelling together. The defense looks good. I'm cool with that. But at the same time, think about how great I feel Zach Wilson can be. The potential of this team, it's stacked. Joe Douglas went out and built an excellent team here. So hell, if they come out of the gate gangbusters and they really start kicking ass and taking names, it could be a 9-11 win team. Hell, maybe we sneak into the playoffs. And if we do, if we make the playoffs, Robert Saleh's immediately coach of the year. Just doesn't matter what the record is. We make the playoffs, Robert Saleh's coach of the year.
Yeah, so if the Jets were to make the playoffs, that would mean that somebody in the AFC East is going to miss out. Well, one of the two that are expected, we'll say universally, who misses out, the Bills or the Dolphins? Now, we're split on who we would think as an admin team. What are your thoughts? Who would be the team that dropped down to third if we were to take first or second?
Well, it's interesting, and it's a breath of fresh air. It is a breath of fresh air that out of two teams you mentioned out of three, one was not the New England Patriots. And that's because their dynasty's over. Whether they want to accept it or not, it's over. And I was one of the firm believers saying it wasn't Brady, that Belichick was, the mastermind behind that system. But Brady and Belichick are starting to prove that wrong. The more Brady keeps kicking ass and the more the Patriots don't do well, it's starting to kind of look the other way, that maybe it was Brady that made Belichick. So I think it's beautiful that you didn't mention the Patriots in that statement. But even the Miami Dolphins, man, I mean, I think they're overhyped right now. I mean, I like Tua, but this is a team last year that they had to play Ryan Fitzpatrick. They couldn't get it together. So I think the Bills are the big team to worry about. They're definitely becoming the dominant team in the AFC East. It's scary, man. I did not think Josh Allen was going to be this. But then again, Josh Allen wasn't this when he was drafted. I mean, if he was still the same player when he was drafted, he probably would be a bust like I thought he would be. But he changed his career around. He did literally the opposite. He did like the reverse Sam Darnold, basically. He became the quarterback and learned and became as great as he could possibly be. Like, he's totally a different player than he was when he was drafted. Like, totally different. So I am very afraid of the Bills, but again, man, I believe in Zach Wilson, and I think he can be as good as anybody. The way I looked at it was the same argument I made with Sam. Like, I was like, yeah, could he be good with talent and a good team and good coaching? Yeah, he can be good, but he's never going to be great. He's never going to be a top 5, top 10 consistent quarterback in the NFL. And I do believe Zach Wilson can be that.
Yeah, it's funny how you said you thought Josh Allen was going to be a bust.
I totally did.
I'm still on the fence because I think a lot of his success last year was the fact that he had Diggs. And I think if he lost Diggs at any point this year, I don't think they improved as much as other teams in the draft. They're still a very good team and they will compete for it. I'm just not so. He's only had the 1 year of total production. The 2 years prior, he was on par with Sam. He has got better, but last year he went from having nothing at wide receiver to arguably one of the best wide receivers in the game at the minute with Stephon.
Yeah, so, I mean, I hate the Bills. Like, I just want to make that. I hate the Bills, like, really hate the Bills. So it pains me in my stomach to say this, but because I'm big with QB eval. Josh Allen is a completely different quarterback than when he was drafted. Yeah. From his rookie year to now, it's like watching a totally different player. And from what I saw last year, if it's not a fluke and that's the player he is with the pocket awareness and understanding reads now and making better decisions, not being a running quarterback before being a pocket quarterback, I hate to say it, but I mean, he could be on the verge of becoming great.
And
believe me, it makes me want to throw up the site.
Yeah, he reminds me of what everyone thought Cam Newton was going to become coming out of Auburn. He didn't get the hype that Cam got, and yet has developed into what everyone thought Carolina were getting, with a giant man that could do stupid things with his body that people didn't think were possible. I have got another question based on a giant man. AVT, was it worth it? Did we give up too much? Did we give up just enough? What's your feelings on AVT?
Not only did we not give enough, I think one day we're going to turn around and ask, how did we not give up more? That's honestly the way it's going to be. I think the people are looking at this rhetoric of not giving up enough, giving up too much. They don't know AVT. They don't know the caliber of player that we got. I felt like he was a top 15 talent. I kept saying the Jets are going to have to trade up to around that spot. I do a Weapons Hop podcast live on Fridays. We did live during the draft. And I was saying that area, like the Viking, I think it was, trying to remember, it was the Rams, that area, like 13 to 16 was where I figured he was going to go because all those teams needed a player of his caliber. I felt like he was a top 15 guy. Joe Douglas doubled down more. Joe Douglas said he was a top 10 guy, and we were lucky to get him. So when you look at AVT and the talent of him, the best way to look at it, it's the equivalent of when the Colts drafted Quentin Nelson. It's the equivalent of when Washington drafted Brandon Scherf. Like, that's the quality of offensive guard we're talking about here. He's plug and play immediately. He has the potential to be an absolute all-star. So I think very shortly, the rhetoric is going to turn into, that's it? Like, all you gave away was 2 third-round picks to move up to get a guy of that caliber, and you got a 4th round back? Like, that's pretty impressive. So yeah, that kid just best guard in the NFL, arguably one of the best offensive linemen in the draft, had a pass blocking grade last year of 92.8, which is just utter insanity. He's amazing. He is unbelievable. He is, when we traded up for him, I was so happy. The second we traded up, I knew it was for him.
Yeah, we were live on a Zoom all chatting. And we were talking, he's not going to be there. He's not going to be there. And it was, the Jets are on the clock. We were like, what? It was quite a lot of fun because we all were watching on different mediums. So Otis got it 2 seconds before me, and I got it 3 seconds before Kane. So we were all sat there like trying not to give it away. That was terrible. But
draft is like my religion, man. Like there's so many things that excite me, but the draft is just my thing. Like, I'm so hardcore, like I don't want anything ruined for me. So if you watch the podcast, it's funny, you'll see right before the Jets pick, I turned my computer away and took my headphone out. Like, I'm focused on the TV. Like, I don't want to know who they took. Then I came back on and I'm like, oh, look what happened.
No, we are like, I've been following the draft a while. I know Otis says, Kane, it was like your first proper year, wasn't it? Like, where you were well into it.
Yeah. Next.
And like, so me and Kane are doing a podcast about a journey into getting further into the draft. So it might be cool to have a chat about maybe doing a crossover on that sometime as well, because we're learning it together and we're trying to bring some people along for the ride. But it's just, at the minute, it's just us learning the basics, which is quite cool.
Yeah, no, I'm big into it. I mean, I do amateur draft eval myself, and throughout the whole season, last draft process, people were going, I don't get your board. Why is it different, than the big guys? Like, I don't get, why do you have this player here? And my answer was always, well, if you want me to just give you a generic take that everyone else is giving you, I can do that. That's totally fine. Like, I'm giving you my eval. Like, I've looked into it. And I even felt that I still kind of feel that Rashad Bateman could wind up being the best wide receiver in this, 2 drafts ago.
Yeah. I think that's a fair.
Sorry, in this draft,
yeah. Bateman was fantastic, wasn't he? He was a steal where it ended up going. So going back a draft now, I actually thought Tyler Johnson that Tampa Bay took, his teammate the year before, was also an exceptional wide receiver.
No, I agree. I totally agree. And I said, last year when we took Mims, like I had done too many mocks last year. I did like 40 something mocks and I never had Mims, not one of them, not because I didn't want him, because he was never there. He never fell to the second round. So the fact that he didn't fall to that pick, Joe Douglas trades back. Jet Twitter loses their mind that they lost Denzel Mims, and then he still gets him. That was amazing to me, because that to me told me one of the most important things you could ever know when you want a GM in the draft process, that he doesn't just understand and evaluate and know talent. He knows what other teams are going to do. He understands, well, this team is going to do this based on this need. And I honestly felt he was confident Mims would be there. And that's amazing. And we see that with, his ability to wield and deal, move up and down in the draft. It's so important to have a GM that doesn't just, obviously, that we didn't have for so long with guys like Itzik and McCagnon, guys that can actually evaluate talent themselves, but take it a step further and evaluate what other teams are going to do.
Yeah. Go on, Ken.
I was going to say, there is one position we haven't talked about, tight end, and we argue about it a lot. I'd love
right favorite position, by the way. I've never seen anybody as high on Kyle Pitts as Kane was.
I'd love Kenny Yeboah to start with Elijah Moore to Ole Miss. That'll be fun. But what do you think is going to happen?
Okay, I'm 100% with you, man. I loved when we brought Yeboah in as a undrafted free agent because on Ole Miss last year, he was the second best receiving option behind Elijah Moore. Dude had over 500 yards, good amount of touchdowns. He's a really good receiving option, which is why, because he's got so much talent, I honestly think that you look at a guy like Chris Herndon and people say, oh, well, he may not even be a starter. With a guy like Yeboah and being afraid if he's going to make it through waivers, I would take it a step further and say Chris Herndon might even get cut. Chris Herndon could be a surprise cut in this offseason because we look at it as, he's in a contract year. When players are in a contract year, like Corey Davis last year, like Otis pointed out, they light it up. That's what you expect. He's in a contract year. This is when he's supposed to get paid. If he's not going to do it now, he's never going to do it. So this was a contract year for Herndon. We expected big stuff. He's been dropping the ball a lot in camp, so much that he was moved to the twos. But we kept hearing Tyler Kroft and Ryan Griffin as the better receiving options. So I take it a step further, man. I think the two of them are going to be the top tight ends this year. Not saying they're going to be great. Like, by any means, tight end is definitely not a good position for us, but I think they're going to wind up being the starting tight ends. I mean, Tyler Kroft is one of the best blocking tight ends in the NFL, which is an underappreciated aspect with the run game. Like, there are offensive linemen that praise Tyler Kroft for his blocking ability, which is really impressive. He had one season where he had over 400 yards, 7 touchdowns. So the potential's there. Ryan Griffin had that really good year with us 2 years ago, back in 2019, when he had over 300 yards. With Herndon having as many drops, I think the two of them could be the focal point. And then the question is, are you afraid, is Kenny Yeboah not going to make it through waivers? And I would be legitimately afraid of that. I mean, I would have expected him to be a 5th to 7th round pick. Again, he was the second best receiving option on Ole Miss last year. If you're afraid he's not going to make it through waivers, and you also have Trayvon Wesco, Chris Herndon may not be on the team.
I think if I was Zach Wilson, I'd be pretty damn happy with the idea of Griffin and Kroft staying at tight end 1 and 2 as well, because if you set that up as a 2 tight end set with 2 speedy wide receivers and play a play action play and keep them tight ends in, it doesn't matter what blitz comes, even if it's all out, he's going to stay on his feet.
Yeah. And if you look at them, they both were decent receiving options when they got the ball. They didn't get the ball too much because they were mainly, not Griffin as much, but Kroft was mainly a blocking option, which you want on a team that you're trying to make the offensive line better. But I think the two of them could, be the 1 and 2 guys. And then if you look at Yeboah, I mean, are you afraid he's going to make it through? And I would keep Wesco because Wesco is a really good blocker. Like, he could be a fullback or another blocking option. So right now I see Herndon as potentially being the odd man out and it being a 4-man tight end group of those 4 guys.
That's really interesting.
I think when we were talking Wesco with Nick, he said that the best running back he'd played with was Bilal Powell, not because of his running ability, because his understanding of how the offensive line works. And I think Wesco's blocking ability and the fact the fullback side, I think that's where we could see his positive in this system, because it is faultless to kind of like support that line. And we know what a bad offensive line's been like. And at the minute, it looks pretty solid. And it just seems to be getting stronger every decision that we make. So yeah, I think the Wesco, he could cause issues for Herndon. I'm not sold on Griffin. I think his numbers are a little bit inflated because of where he got the ball. When you're the only person that's open in the end zone or in any type of red zone play, you're going to have good stats because, he's normally blocking and all of a sudden he's got nobody to block. He's going to catch the ball. He was 5 yards away from Sam. Sam was not that bad. I'm a little bit like, Griffin is a bit older as well. So I would prefer to see Yeboah come through, but I wouldn't be angry at any of the others as long as it works for Zach, for me.
I got another question on the offensive line. We've just mentioned it improving at every decision. One of those decisions was bringing in Moses from Washington. All 4 Moses coming in, brilliant tackle, don't have an issue with his quality. Was a little bit surprised that Fant got the downgrade, however. I thought Fant for 10 million last year performed admirably at right tackle. I don't think he necessarily deserved the bump down to backup tackle. What was your sort of opinion on that?
Well, I would say Fant was okay last year. I mean, he wasn't bad by any means, but I would say Fant was average on his best days and slightly below average on most days. And I think his PFF grade was like 60 something, give or take. I mean, he wouldn't have been a bad option to be the starting right tackle. And people talk about, like you were just saying, he's making a lot of money. It doesn't matter. That's kind of the beauty of it right now. Like I was joking about it, you don't get an award at the end of the season for having money left over. Like, that's not a thing. Like, no one's like, well, you won and you had this much money, so you get an extra award. Like, there's no point in having extra money. So Joe Douglas has put us in such an amazing situation where we went from like Mike McCagnon, who spends $250 million in free agency and bankrupts this team, to being very cash lucrative. And that's what I pointed out last year when people were crapping on his free agency. I'm like, no, he's doing this smart. He's doing this because it's long-term vision. He's not just thinking about the short game. He's planning for the future to build a cap. That's what he's done. So we can easily afford to pay Fant $8 million to be a swing tackle. I'm cool with that because we can afford to. Moses is a huge upgrade. I mean, again, Fant wasn't bad, and he definitely could have been a starter. But Moses has consistently been one of the best right tackles in the NFL for the last 7 years, having his best season last year with an 80.6 BFF grade. Again, Fant's was like 60 something, and an 86 run blocking grade. Like, this dude is a beast. And he even played a little left tackle last year when the other guy went down, the left tackle. I can't remember. It was Lucas. I'm trying to remember off the top of my head. But he went down and he stepped in the left tackle position. So God forbid you need someone to do that for some reason. Something does, I don't think there's any issues with Mekhi. I just want to throw that out. Weight is not an issue there. But let's say there's a problem. You have him now. You have versatility. You kick him to left tackle. You put Fant at right tackle. The offensive line may not even skip a beat. So I like the signing. I think Fant could potentially compete for the right guard spot. And my answer is, why the hell not? Like, I mean, let him compete for it. He's very athletic. He's a good offensive lineman. Maybe he wins. And if he doesn't, then you have an expensive swing tackle. Plus, I also kind of like the idea, like with a Croft maybe, because Fant is one of the most athletic offensive linemen in the NFL. Like, one of the most athletic ones. So I just kind of get creative. I'm like, well, if he's going to play swing tackle, maybe they can use him as like an inline blocking tight end that goes out for like a goal line pass or like a 1 or 2 yard pass. Like, that could be exciting.
Yeah.
I would like to see that because Fant is pretty. I watched his softball game for the charity a few weeks ago, and I mean he was putting moves out. He was fast. I mean,
but he's ridiculously athletic for a man his size.
Yeah, I mean they all did pretty well at that. That was the week before the Becton video came out of him in the gym, and I'd seen the softball game, and I said to the guys, I went, look, there is no issue with him. How fast he was moving. He's dropped his weight. He's where he needs to be. So yeah, I'm excited to have an athletic line.
James, have you got a question?
Yeah. So speaking a lot about the current roster, but I was, pardon me, just wondering about what was your favourite Jets memory, season, or coach, really?
I mean, if we're going all different things, if we're going coach, I mean, right now, obviously, without counting new coaches, Rex Ryan was my favorite coach, because growing up back, and I would say those years, honestly, those years with Mark Sanchez, which is why I went nuts. I went absolutely crazy when PFF decided to call Mark Sanchez the worst draft pick in Jets history over the last 7 years. Like, I lost my freaking mind. Like, I'm like, are you crazy? Like, that's not even clickbait. Like, to be clickbait, it has to at least be an intelligent take that is on the other side of it. Like, that's just flat out stupid. Like, that doesn't even make sense. Like, he's not even the worst quarterback pick. Like, you could put Geno Smith and Christian Hackenberg in that conversation, let alone worst pick. You got guys like Vernon Golson. So those were some great years. I loved, when Rex Ryan had the energy, the team was energized. When Bart Scott was there, the line was amazing with Mangold, Ferguson, Brandon Moore, Willie Colon, Woody. Like, I loved that team. I'd probably say my childhood with the years of like Lavernius Cole, Santana Moss, Jericho Cotchery, Pennington, Curtis Martin. And it's funny, I think about this because like there's some young guys, like we had Jew Jets, who's like a young kid, and he was doing like jet takes, and we had him on the show on Weapons Hot like a week or so ago. And it made me realize, I was like, wait, like I grew up through like Chad Pennington and Curtis Martin. And even those 09 years, I was like, the years you grew up through, like, man, it was tough to be a Jet fan. Like these young kids, man, I'm just trying to imagine that being my childhood, like the childhood of like Geno Smith and John Itzik and Mike McCagnon. Like, it's crazy. These young kids, like these are as hardcore fans as they come.
Yeah. We often say it like, it's one of the questions we ask everybody of like, how long have you been a fan and how did you get into it? Because if you've joined in the last, I would say 8 years, like you are hardcore. You've done your time. Doesn't matter if you've been around longer. The last 8 years have been tough.
No, without a doubt, man. And I just realized that because I was thinking about it. You know, you think of your perspective. Like I remember such great years with the Jets. Like my childhood was awesome. The years of Vinny Testaverde in that '98 run, Pennington, even the Sanchez years. These kids don't know any of that. They're literally from like Gino and John Itzigan. And I'm just like, I feel so bad for you. Like that's all. I just looked at him like, I'm sorry. Like that's all I could think of. Like, I'm so sorry.
Yeah, it's a tough one when you look back that way.
Yeah, very.
So obviously we have the London game happening this year, which is very, very exciting. There's lots of things happening. What are your, like, how much do you know about the London games? Obviously the Jets have played here before. Have you ever been over? Do you know much about what happens at our London games?
I have not, unfortunately. Unfortunately, it's kind of even tough for me to get to the regular games, but I try to go as much as I can. I get to maybe 1 game, 2 if I can through the year, because it's pretty expensive. But unfortunately, I've never been to England, period. I'd love to, come to the UK at some point, hop around all, see Britain, see Scotland, see Ireland.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, driving from Scotland to London is only about 6 hours, really. You can do it all in trains in a few hours. It's not a very big place. But I know Jeff Reinebold comes on quite often with us, and he said that after the Super Bowl, the London game is the next best game to go to. It would be interesting to get like an American take on that. That isn't somebody that works for the London game.
I apologize, man. My headphone cut out for a second. I was trying to get it back on.
So Jeff Reinebold was saying that the London game is the second best game to attend behind the Super Bowl. So it's like, what would be your opinion on that bold statement? Because obviously you don't work for the London game, but Jeff does. So he does get a bit of bias towards it.
I mean, it's fun to watch. I like the London games because, like, when we talking about, the beginning of the podcast, it's exciting to bring football to different areas. I remember, unfortunately, they couldn't have the Mexico City game the other year, but they do that as well. I was saying, it's almost interesting. It can kind of, in a way, rename the NFL like the IFL. In a way, it's becoming an international football league where we're getting fans from Europe and even areas in Asia. I think that's going to be starting to happen more too. Maybe we're going to see, who knows, maybe, games in other areas of Europe, maybe in Asian countries, maybe even in South America. Who knows? But I think it's interesting that the NFL is, expanding their reach like that.
They have started bidding for Germany for next year. We have a lot of guys from Gangrene Germany in our group. We have Gangrene France in our group and Gangrene Sweden, which is quite cool. And like we're all obviously planning lots of things for the game over here. We're chatting to the Jets about some things that they want to do. I've just been messaging with Nick Mangold's team. He's coming over and wants to do a sign-in with his barbecue sauce. So it's going to be pretty cool.
I've heard that stuff is really good.
Yeah, well, I'm working with the importer to bring it into the UK. So we're going to have a lot of fun with that, hopefully. So, yeah, we're excited for the London game. I think going into it, we could be in a good position because, like you said, not many people are going to know what to expect with us.
And they can't. Like I said, you can't. I mean, you have to look at all different areas and try and synthesize it together to figure out what's going to happen. I mean, this is the NFL. They're a smart group of guys. By week 3, even at minimum week 4, teams are going to start to catch on. But those first couple of weeks, we got to come out of the gate hard. We got to bring stuff they're not going to be ready for. It would be really amazing with this whole rookie team with a rookie quarterback to start the season off 3-0. That would be wonderful.
Can we wait till week 6 till the catch is out so we can have a win in London? I mean, it's exciting to come over because the Atlanta Falcons have a good following in the UK as well, and they're pretty good guys. We do get on well with them. We have a chat with them quite often. So yeah, it's an exciting time to be a UK fan. Do you have any questions about, like, obviously the group, the European support, or anything like that?
I'd definitely be interested to hear, how you guys got into the Jets. I mean, like, did you have family members that, were Jet fans and they maybe lived here and moved to the UK? Or like you guys, like when you got into football, was that just a team that you picked and stuck with?
Well, I like Kane's one, so Kane, you can tell yours because you think it's daft, but I think it's really good.
Well, I watched the Patriots Giants Super Bowl. That was the first game I ever watched.
The first one or the second one?
It'll
With
be in their second time.
Brady and Manning, yeah. And then I hate both teams. And I looked who was their enemy. Sin the Jets. Sin, Hard Knocks, loved them.
That's funny, man. I mean, that series made me a bigger Giant fan. Like, I'm a New Yorker, so I have major New York pride. Like, I'm a huge Yankee fan, but when they're not in it, I'll pull for the Mets. As long as they're not playing the Yankees. Same thing with the Jets. Like, if they're not playing the Giants, I'll pull for the Giants. I was always a big Eli fan. I thought Giant fans totally gave him a bad rap. Like, if he were a Jets quarterback, 4,000 yards every year, dude would have been legendary. Like, we haven't had a quarterback like that. And they took advantage of him. They didn't realize what they had till he was gone. Like, that's a song, like, you don't know what you got till it's gone.
that was
but that game really, like, that made me love the Giants because, like, I hate the Patriots. And, man, them Eli Manning taking 2 Super Bowls away from Tom Brady. Man, that's just the difference between him having 9 and him having double digits.
What about you, Ant?
Well, I came over to New York for when I was in high school for work experience. So I did like hospitality and leisure studies. So I did like a day at Madison Square Garden. I did a day at the MCI Center and things like that. And then one day I got to go to like a sports training facility. Nobody told us what it was or who it was. And then they told us when we got there, they said, "Oh, it's an American football camp." And it was the green and white scrimmage in '99. And we just, like, as we were walking down, we saw Curtis Martin going through the line. And I was just like, that is mean. And from then it was just, we have to watch, we have to find out more. So yeah, mine was quite nice because it was Martin, and it was at that time when we'd had the 98, 99 season. And then obviously Brady came into the league the year after, and it kind of started going downhill. Then we had the 2010, the 29, 2010. And then, yeah, we've just had the downscale after. So yeah, I've had some ups and downs. What was yours again, James? Because we haven't done your interview yet, so I can't actually remember yours.
Well, around about 2008-ish, a lot of people in my school started getting into NFL, and we used to even play. Like, we used to play it on the gravel, like do plays and whatnot. And everyone was, going for the Patriots really. And I'm a Wolves fan, which are a pretty terrible football team from where I'm from. And there's just something in me which can't support a historically good team. I wanted something that was going to be a struggle, and it wasn't a guaranteed win every week. And I just really resonated with the Jets and that hard style of defensive ground and pound football. Yeah, kind of a bit stuck since.
Well, if you were looking for a team with the underdog mentality, you chose wisely.
Yeah, I think so.
What about yours, Otis? We might as well do yours.
So I started watching around the Darrelle Revis sort of coming into the league. Loved Darrelle, what he offered, the talents that he had. So sort of got into the Jets that way. But the sort of final nail in the coffin, I guess, was I met my wife at college. She's a Dolphins fan. Her mum and dad are Green Bay Packers fans. So one Sunday, sat with my girlfriend, now wife, watching NFL with the parents, and the Green Bay Packers were playing the New York Jets. And Revis was playing, typically doing very well. Her mum and dad were cheering for Green Bay as she was, and I was sort of like, man, I can't have this. So I started cheering for the Jets, and then that was it. It was, Revis all the way. And yeah, I'm massive Revis fan, favorite player ever, and yeah.
One of the greatest of all times, man. The GOAT at cornerback.
Yeah.
That's what gets me
Definitely.
excited about Pinnock, man. Like, not saying he is him, but I look at the potential with, a Pitt player playing on an island like that. The only issue being beat over the top by speed guys. I think, again, I look at that as a non-factor. Like, everyone's like, that's why he went late. I'm like, well, I think people are looking at the wrong things. Like, I love his physicality, his ball track, like kind of like with Revis, if you think about it, the physicality, the ability to track the ball, to find the ball in the air, to know where the sideline. It's very impressive. I really like his potential.
There's a guy in the league that actually reminds me a lot of Revis, although not a Jet, unfortunately. And that's Jair Alexander at the Packers, actually. The way Jair plays the game, being that man out on the edge and speed, power, not afraid to hit somebody, ball hawking, it really does remind me of Revis. And they like to go the other way from him, which, again, just reminds me of Revis. I've never seen a man shut down half field before, and that was just nuts.
Yeah, I loved Revis, man. He was the GOAT. And I think he was the greatest corner to play the sideline. Like the sideline, like what you would call a boundary cornerback, a cornerback that uses the sideline. He was probably the best boundary cornerback to ever play the sport. Like other guys used it as well. When you watched him, the boundary was legit like another defender covering the receiver. Like he just used it like it was magic to watch.
Yeah. One of my favorite plays is him tracking Moss down the sideline and picking Brady off on the Moss deep pass. And it was exactly that. He'd got Moss pinned against the sideline. The ball had to go over top of him, and he just made sure it couldn't. And it was just, beautiful.
And he picked Brady off, which is even better.
I think of that David Harris one, man. I think of the one where David Harris just picked it, right in front of him. And then, he's not a runner. His linebackers back then weren't, so he got gassed. But that was fun to watch.
What an underrated player he was as well. Talking about great players. Why? Yeah, hitman.
Yeah. So, well, I think we've been on quite a while. Obviously,
I don't mind. I love talking Jets. If you want to ask anything else,
I'm sure we could probably go on. I am going to press pause on it, but we will stay on. But yeah. So yeah, thanks for coming on, Harrison. It's been very, very cool. In closing, do you want to do a shout out to the European Jets fans and Jets fans around the world?
Definitely, man. Definitely. And like you were mentioning, this is the time to be a Jet fan. Like I grew up through some great years, some great times being a Jet fan, doing, eval myself. It's been tough these last couple of years. It's been really, really tough through the Itzik years, through the McCagnon years. But right when we got Joe Douglas, I had a great feeling about him coming from the Ozzie Newsome school of being a GM, knowing what he's doing, all the decisions he made. That was the beginning of this culture change. We went from, that LOL Jets narrative where we went from people like Anthony Barr, who literally leveraged the Jets to get a better contract. Now we're at the point where guys like Corey Davis, Carl Lawson, they want to come here. They want to play for us because of Joe Douglas, because of Robert Saleh, the energy he's bringing, the kind of energy we haven't seen since Rex Ryan, players wanting to run through a wall for him. This is the time. Zach Wilson, I love this kid. The potential is just so much more than any quarterback we've had since Chad Bennington. Like we've gone through so much hardship, but this is the time. Things have changed. The culture change is now complete. We're looking forward. This is it. We're building a competitive team. The right pieces are in place. It's been a rough travel, but we're here. We made it to the mountaintop.
Amazing.
That was brilliant.